Begin the current Daf Mesech Nazir Daf Lamed. Begin 9 lines down at the top of the Yamid, where the Gemara continues the halacha, the next Mishnah, continuing on this theme of this parak regarding halacha l'meish mesinais. We mentioned in the previous Mishnah that isha madar as benoi benazir. There's a relationship, a father with his son regarding naziros, and Rabbi Yochanan had said halacha hi benazir. So now we continue the halacha, the next Mishnah, which is a different halacha regarding that actually a son could actually do his karbanos naziris from his father, which we're going to see in the Gemara is also Rabbi Yochanan says halacha ben nazir. Should corresponds to Kazakh and the Cheskot turn to Daf Yomi. We're going for today's Daf. Chodesh Ad. So what we're going to discuss about is halacha mishvasina that ish megalech al naziras aviv, that a man could do his hair cutting ceremony. He could bring the karbanos from the naziras from his father that his father didn't end up bringing, and he could bring it for his own karbanos naziras. Rabbi Yosef's distinction between who hayahuva of nazirim, if they were both nazirim, and now he wants to use his father's karbanos, versus it's actually two opposite girsais and taisus, as we'll see, and haya of nazir, if the father was a nazir and he wasn't, now he wants to become afterwards, regarding which is the halacha. And the Chum disagree and hold that there is no distinction between these two cases, and we'll see the Gemara wants to know which way that is. And then the Gemara has a few different questions on the Beis where the halacha b'Sinai applies. What happens if he has shnei banim nazirim? If he has two sons in nazirim, how do you do it? Do they split it? Does the first come, first serve? How about Bechar and Pashit? Usually Bechar gets a double portion. Do you say the same thing over here in the halacha b'Sinai that he inherits for his kabbanis naziris double of the regular son? How about Hektish? What happens if the father says in the oifen of Hektish? Generally, the son doesn't get a double portion in Hektish. Would he still get a double portion in that? How about Aviv Nazir Olam Hu Nazir Stam? Let's say the father was a different type of Nazir, Nazir Olam, which he also has a karbanis with hair cutting, but it's a different halacha. And the son's Nazir Stam, or let's say the other way around. Would you say also that the son could still use the same karbanis? How about if Av Nazir Tameh? The father was a Nazir that's Tameh, and then he became Tar, but he had a different halacha, and the son is Nazir Tar. Could he use the same funds for the karbanis of Tameh of the father? And the Gemara doesn't answer those questions. And some of the terms that come to today's daf, b'chor netel pishnayim. We know that the firstborn takes a double portion from the Yerusha. So we begin the current daf Lamed, 9 lines down by the top of the Amid, where we begin the next Mishnah. So we're going to first read the Mishnah, but then Tais is going to tell us a very different girsa. Ha'ish megaleach al naziras aviv. So this halacha that a man could do his hair cutting ceremony with his karbanis for the naziras that his father had taken. But ve'ina isha megalechas al naziras aviyah. But a woman, similar wording to the previous Mishnah, we're talking about mader as benoi benazir, but isha is not mader as benah benazir. Here also, although it's a very different halacha, different generational going backwards, but the woman cannot be megalachas on naziras aviyah. If a woman takes a naziras, she cannot take her father's karbanis for her own naziras. Says the Mishnah, Ketzad. So what's the case talking about? That he could use the father's money. So, Mishay of Nazir, if someone's father was a Nazir, we'll first read it the way the Girsa is in our Mishnayos. The father was a Nazir. V'hifresh mo'i setumim. And the father separated unspecified funds on the Zerusa for his Naziris. V'meis, and he dies. V'amar, and now the son says, Harini Nazir, okay, look, I want to be a Nazir. I'm a Nazir, my father left over, he wasn't able to finish up his Naziris, bring his Kabbanis. I want to become a Nazir on the condition that I could use my hair cutting ceremony to take my karbanis from the funds of my father. So Rabbi Yossi says, no, these funds are going to fall for Nadava. This is not a case that he could use the hair cutting money of his father. So what's So what is the case that he could use his father's funds for his own naziris? Is Misha Hayahuva of Nazirim. If him and his father were both Nazirim, the hefresh aviv moistumim, and then the father separated unspecified funds in zerus of his naziris b'meis, and he died. Oh, zeu shemagalech al naziris aviv. That's a case where he could go ahead and take the hair cutting money from his father and use it for his own naziris. Again, according to our girsa and our mishnah, the case is specifically, Rabbi Yossi says, when could he use it? Only if they were simultaneously nazirim. The father separated, then they died. Then the son could go out and use it. But if the father had been a nazir and he died, and he wasn't able to use the funds, and then the son says, oh, I want to use Tati's money, that's not going to work. However, Taisis, here towards the bottom of the Amid, in the Divrei Maskil, he says a different girsa. he says, now I'll read it's in the, most Gemaras have it in black and bold. His girsa is the other way. A man could go out and do the hair cutting ceremony for the Naziris of his father. But a woman cannot. Okay, that's so far the same. But Ketzad is different. Ketzad, Misha Hayuhuva of Nazirim. If he and his father were both Nazirim, which again the first version held that's when he could do it. The version of Taisus holds ever hifish of Mois and Nazirus and Mason the father separated monies from Nazirim and he died. No, that goes for Nadava. That cannot be used by the son. So what's the case that he could use his father's money for his own Naziris? Is the other case. The father was a Nazir. And he had unspecified funds and he died. And then the son comes along. Excuse me. And he says, Hareini Nazir, I want to be a Nazir. Amanas Shagaleach Amois Abba. Thank you. On the condition that I could use the hair cutting money from my father. That's the case that he could use the hair cutting from his father's funds. And says Taisus, he says this is the girsa that were in earlier commentaries and the Pirush Rabbeinu Baruch, and he says in many svarim it's the opposite, the way we have it by us, that actually him and his father are Nazir, then he could be megalecha on his father's monies. And if he wasn't b'chayav, then he cannot. But again, these are two different girsas. It's just important to point out because Taisus is going to be going based on his girsa later on the Gemara. So again, two different versions. It's one or the other. But this is the halacha that the son could use the father's funds in one of these two cases. Says the Gemara, my timer. What's the reason? What's the Gemara asking? That a woman cannot do the giluach on our father's money. Why is it only a son could use it? So Rabbi Yochanan says halacha hi ben Nazir. It's halacha l'Moshe Messinai by Nazir. So the Gemara actually asks, Pshita. What do you mean? This is obvious. My lememra. What do I need, Rabbi Yochanan, to tell? What do I need the Mishnah to tell us that the son could do the giluach and not the daughter? The ben Yerush says aviv. What do you mean? We know the son inherits the father. Basloi, the daughter not. So without the halacha l'Moshe Messinai, I would know that the bas cannot do giluach. Why do I need the teaching of Rabbi Yochanan? So if so, says Taisus, when the Gemara originally asked my taima, basically we're asking, what was the question of the Gemara? What are you asking in the Mishnah, my taima? Of course it's pasha that it's ben v'le bas. So Taisus says, it must be Rabbi Yochanan himself. The Gemara doesn't ask a question and asks on itself why it's asking a question. So like the Gemara, the famous Gemara El Metzias that every kid learns, that the Gemara says, V'kama, it's in Mois Mufazaren, the Gemara says, and how much is Mufazaren? It says, Kabab Amma. So there, it's not the Gemara asking the question. That's all part of Yitzchak's statement. He's saying, V'kama, and this and that, and then the Gemara goes to discuss that. Here also, the question my time was Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was saying, what's the reason he explained? Because Allah Moshe Messinai. So the Gemara is asking on Rabbi Yochanan, what do you want Allah Moshe Messinai for? Of course, the son Yarshins the money and not the daughter. Says Gemara, no, it was necessary to have the halacha Moshe Messinai. The less ilabas. In the case when he only has a daughter. What would you say that yes, this halacha actually is based on Yerusha, Yershin Gemirah, and therefore that's why the son could do it and not the daughter. But when there's only a daughter, then she could also bring her father's funds. Then you tell me, base, Kamash Malan, halacha. That's why we need the halacha Moshe to say no. Even if the only Yarshin is the daughter, still she cannot bring the father's funds because it's a halacha l'Moshe Messinai was gezakt, was said only for the son and not for the daughter. Okay, Ibarle, the following question. Pligi Rabban led the Rabbi Yosi. Do the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Yosi? Oy loy pligi. In other words, when we said the halacha of the Mishnah was said, it said Harish Megalech, it says a whole case. It doesn't say what the halacha is, it says a case. And then it says, Rabbi says, what's the halacha? Halacha is like this. So it sounds like that's Rabbi Yosi. But generally when you say a singular Tana, it sounds like that the Rabbanan would disagree. So do they disagree in the halacha of the Mishnah or not? Fine. Says the Gemara, if you say that they do disagree, the Rabbanan on Rabbi Yosi, because like we said, because he said Rabbi Yosi, it sounds like Rabbanan disagree. Now there was two halachas Rabbi Yosi said, and that's why it was so important to go through the two different gersais, because you have to know which one did Rabbi Yosi say. The Rabbanan come and disagree. What's the ratio? What's the seifa? So there was two halachas. There was halacha when it doesn't work, when we say no, it's going to have to go for nadava, And then there was the Seifa of the Mishnah, which basically says, what, you want to know the case that the son could do it? This is the case of the Seifa. So the Gemara is asking, if the Rabban disagreeing on Rabbi Yossi, are they disagreeing on Reisha? Meaning, the first halach Rabbi Yossi said was, that if the son took a neder in the father's lifetime, he cannot go ahead and do the hair cutting. The Rabban is saying, no. You could do the hair cutting not only if it was after he died, even if he took a Nazir together with his father. They disagree on the Reisha in the case that you're saying doesn't work. No, we disagree to say it does work. Or Seifa. Or they disagree on the Seifa. In other words, Rabbi Yossi said that if the son took the neder after the father's death, then he can be melech on the Nazir's Aviv. Rabban is saying, no, you cannot do the hair cutting ceremony. So essentially our question is opposites. Does Rabban hold it always works, or does it never work? Because Rabbi Yossi differentiated. He said, well, I'll tell you a case that it doesn't work, and I'll tell you a case that it does work. Again, different girsais, not like our Mishnah. Today's girsa was the inverse of our girsa. That the case that does not work is when they were both Nazirim together, and then the father died, he cannot use it. The case that could work is after he died. He says, I'll be a Naz, I'll take Tati's money. So that's when it does work. So Rabban, do they disagree on the Reisha? And therefore they say that even over there it does work, so now both cases do work? Or they disagree on the Seifa, and they say that no, even that case does not work, and they hold both cases don't work. That's the question of the Gemara. So it says the Gemara, Tashema, it's being a raya that they disagree on the Reisha, meaning the Reisha that basically says does not work. Rabbana disagree. They say that even that case of what? Of when they were both alive and Nazirim at the same time, and then the father has separate money and he died, that then the son cannot use it. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. That the Rabban disagree and they hold that even that case would work. So they hold all cases, not only Achamisa, but even B'chayav, will also work. What's the raya? So it's from the following Brisa. Brisa says, Ketzad Amru, what was the case said when the halacha was said of Ha'ish Magalech on Nazir Zav, that a son could take the hair cutting ceremony from his father's funds? So it says the Brisa like this. Misha haya of Nazir, if his father was a Nazir, the hifish of Moisel Nazir was a mace. Only the father was a Nazir. Separated funds for the Nazirs and he died. But now the son says, Harini Nazir, you know what? I'll be a Nazir. I'll take over this great heritage over here. I'm a Abba on the condition that I could use the hair cutting ceremony from my father's funds. Says the Tanakama. This is the case when you could do the Giluch on the father's funds. But if him and his father were both Nazirim, and the father separated funds for the Nazirim and he died, then had the Yipul and David that's going to fall in the David Div Rabbi Yossi. So this is exactly as Tosfos Girsa is of Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah, which said that when does it work? It works only la'achamisa. When does it not work, which is the Reish of our Mishnah? When they were both Nazirim at the same time. But, and this is the main point that we want to bring, the Rabbanan, meaning the other rabbis, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda Amru, they disagree. And what do they disagree on? They say, no, even this case, even if they were both Nazirim at the same time, and the father's mafish the mois, he could use it. So you see that the Rabban disagree on the Reisha, and they hold not only does it work la'achamisa, it even works if they were both Nazirim at the same time. So the Gemara answers the question. But now the Gemara has a few questions regarding this halacha Moshe Sinai. By Rabba. Rabba says like this. He asks, Yesh shnei ban Nazirim. If he has two sons that are Nazirim, which, according to Rabbi Yossi, they took the Nedarim after the father had passed away. According to Rabbanan, would even be if the father was alive and the Nazir at the same time. But be that as it may, he has two sons Nazirim. What's halacha? What's the Gemara's question? So the Gemara explains. Do you say Hilchas Gemirin law that it's halacha Moshe Sinai, meaning there's nothing to do with halachas of Yerusha? Like we said, that's why daughter, even if she's the only one, doesn't get it. So it's not like Yerusha that you have to equally divide it. So okay, kol dekodim galach galach. So whoever comes first and does the hair cutting, he does the hair cutting. Meaning, kol hakodim emzacha. Whoever comes first come, first serve. Oy dilma, maybe, no. Yerusha Gemirin law. That, no, Lamaisa, it is through the format, the halacha Moshe was said in the format of Yerusha, and the Vapalgahava. Therefore, it should be half. This one takes half, and this one takes half, like by other Yerushas. That's one question. Another question says the Gemara, Bayirava. Even if we're going with the concept of Yerusha, the question is like this: B'chayru Pashut. What happens if you have a firstborn and you have a regular son, which is both Nazirim. What's the halacha? What's the question? Says the Gemara, again, Hilchas Gemirna. Do we say it's halacha Moshe Sinai? Not from the basic halacha. And therefore, you shouldn't go ahead and take the Giluach according to what you take from the halachas of Yerusha, meaning, even though we said that by two regular sons they're going to divide it, but it's not like a regular Yerusha regarding that meaning, we'll say it like a Yerusha in that way, that it's going to be split 50-50, but regarding that the firstborn takes double portion, that we're not going to say that he's going to take first the kalachas according to what he takes by other nechasim, because for that maybe that's a unique halacha regarding the actual law, the actual Yerusha mamish. So, Yerusha, maybe it is, maybe it's inheritance. Just like he takes a double portion from the funds that his father, generally when his father passed away. So, so that's how he's going to go and do the hair cutting, and he's going to take a double of the funds that his father separated for his karbanos and naziris, and that's how he's going to use for his giluach. That's the question. Then says the Gemara, and if you're going to say that it is the Yerusha, Ula from the Shaka Megalech, and how much they take in the regular Yerusha, that's how much the firstborn son is going to take. He's going to take 2/3, and the other son's going to get 1/3. That's how he's going to take it for his hair cutting. Okay, but as Rabbeinu Tam explains, bechulin means to say, if you say in a unconsecrated terminology, not in the lashon of hektish, where the father had said, these monies are for naziris. So, like a Yerusha, a son inherits a double portion, what's not hektish? Only the father's chulin things. So if the father said, mois elul and naziris, these funds should be for naziris, that's like a chulin, even though it's for karbanis. So that's when maybe the firstborn son will get a double portion. A behektish loy, what does behektish loy mean? So Rabbeinu Tam explains, if he said, hare elul karbanis naziraisai, that wording is a lashon hektish, karbanis. Maybe over there, he wouldn't get a double portion in those funds. Maybe says the Gemara, no. Even the kanilei legeluach, since ultimately he's acquiring it, like we said in the Yerusha, for the hair cutting. L'maisa, it's for giluach. It's the same thing with whatever wording he uses. No, maybe it wouldn't be a difference. And even if he said the karbanos naziraisai, that it's obvious that it's a lashon hektish, but maybe it wouldn't make a difference, and maybe he would still go ahead and get a double portion. That's another question. Then the Gemara continues with another question. Aviv Nazir Eilam. If, let's say, the father is an eternal Nazir, V'hu Nazir Stam, but he's a regular Nazir, which is for a specific amount of time. Or the other way around, Aviv Nazir Stam, the father is an unspecific Nazir, V'hu Nazir Eilam, and he's an eternal Nazir. What's the halacha? What's the question? The Gemara explains. Ki Gemir in Hilchasa, when did we say halacha Moshe Sinai? Is Bestam Naziris? Is by unspecific Naziris. Which Tosfos says, really, we could have asked the question when, let's say, him and his father are Nazir Eilam. Who said that this halacha was said even by the unique halacha of Nazir Eilam? So Tosfos, no, maybe that was obvious that you would do Giluch because L'maisa they are from the same type of Naziris. But the question is when there are different types of Naziris. He's Stam Naziris, he's Nazir Eilam. Maybe you would say it only by Stam Naziris. Maybe it wouldn't make a difference. So that's why Tosfos said that the wording of the Gemara sounds like, maybe only said it by Stam Naziris. Maybe if they're both Nazir Eilam, it wouldn't work. So he says, no, maybe the Gemara didn't ask, maybe then it would work. But when they're different, maybe it wouldn't work. And then if you're going to say, no, both of them are Naziris Tahara. They're both when you were pure during your Naziris. And maybe then, even if one's Nazir and one's Nazir Stam, that, you could go ahead and do the hair cutting on the father's funds. But the question is, by Rav Ashi, what's Aviv Nazir Tameh? What's if the father is a Nazir Tameh, meaning he became Tameh, and he separated funds for the birds and the ashram that you bring when you purify yourself from your Naziris of Tumah. But V'hu Nazir Tar, the son is a Nazir Tar. The question is, could the son add on to the funds, which is cheaper from birds, to bring his Chatas Eil and Shlama from Naziris of Tahara? Or, a different approach, says Tosfos, when you say of Nazir Tameh, meaning he was a Nazir Tameh, then he started to count over Naziris of Tahara. But since he was Tameh in the middle, it's still not similar to the Naziris of the son, which he never became Tameh at all. So maybe he would not be able to use the funds for his cutting ceremony. Or Says Rav Ashi, what happens if of Nazitar? Let's say the other way around. The father was a Nazitar, and he separated funds. Who Nazir Tami? And the son was a Nazir Tami. What's the halacha? Could the son bring the birds that he needs for his Naziris of Toma from the funds that the father separated from the Naziris of Tahara or not? Says the Gemara, take it, let it stand. It's not clear regarding all these questions how we exactly qualify this halacha Moshe Sinai. Like we said, many different questions regarding is it how exactly is it like Yerusha or not like Yerusha, and regarding what type of Naziris was it said, Nazir Stam, Nazir Olam, Nazir Tamei, Nazir Tar. Hadnullah Misha Amar. We shall return to the fourth parak, Masechet Nazir parak Misha Amar, which spoke about again these halachas of Kabbalah's Naziris, the Hafara of Naziris, with the husband and the wife, with the father and the son, and regarding the halacha Moshe Sinai. Regarding that, in the next daf, we will begin the fifth parak, parak Beishamai. Siyad Deshmaya. Thank you to any time for hosting us.